somewhere along the line, as a bass player in particular, you got to be thinking, well, who else can I gig with? A number of the people that I've met around here, they're doing things other than music, but music related. At some particular point, you anticipate as a musician, you should probably be teaching. Ask questions to listen and understand, not so much to speak.
Welcome to another episode of Contrabass Conversations, your show covering life on the low end of the spectrum. I'm your host, Jason Heath, and we are chatting today with John Davis. And I first ran into John in person at the NAMM show. That's the National Association of Music Merchants, if you're not familiar with that acronym. It's a huge show in Anaheim, California, just south of Los Angeles. 100,000 people, I think, were in attendance this past one. And John and I ran into each other, struck up a conversation. And the topic of that conversation was, you feature all these audition winners and people in major orchestras. How about featuring those of us that are out there in the trenches in smaller markets, making it happen, creating multiple streams of income, and making a difference in a community that's not in Chicago or San Francisco or Los Angeles? That was basically the tenor of the conversation. And he's right. There are so many people out there that, though it's interesting to hear how X, Y, or Z person won the latest big audition, getting some tactical advice and perspective on how to really build your own career anywhere, that's a great topic. And that's what John has done in his career. And he's had a fascinating career, as you're going to hear. John lives in Salina, Kansas, which is a few hours from several major metro areas, but it's a town of 50,000. And John has become kind of a jack of all trades in the music world there. So we talk about that and so many other topics. We actually start off by talking about Arnold Schnitzer and how he got into the luthier world, the circuitous path that he took, which is a great segue into John's varied career. John's wife, Linda's hanging out as we chatted and jumps in a couple times, in case you're wondering what's going on. We talk about how Kansas is a music education, and in particular, string education powerhouse. Whoa, so many topics. Marketing, John's background in radio, television, and film, how he interviewed people while he was in the military in Vietnam, learning how to ask good questions. There's so much valuable content in this conversation. And before we dive into our conversation with John, I'd like to thank D'Addario Strings for sponsoring not only Contrabass Conversations, but events like ISB 2017, like Bass Europe in 2018. It's great what you're doing for the bass community, and we all appreciate it. And if you'd like to play the same strings that artists like Gary Carr, Klaus Freudenstein, Mike Valerio, and hey, even Jason Heath play, check out D'Addario Strings and our giveaway for 10 sets of Kaplan strings. You can go to contrabassconversations.com/strings to enter to win a chance at one of these sets of strings. I'd also like to thank the Bass Violin Shop, which offers bass accessories. They carry everything that a bass player needs, like pickups, strings, bow cases, wheels, bass covers, mutes, quivers, rosin, polish, all that kind of good stuff that we need to pursue our art and craft. You can check them out and all of their accessories, basses, bows, and everything else at bassviolinshop.com. Okay, here we go with our conversation with John Davis.
Arnold Schnitzer, he was in the corporate world for a bunch of years, and interest in like management consulting. Here, I'll give you one of those.
Right.
And then he like just circuit, but he was like really into his, I think, like shipbuilding when he was little. His dad,
okay.
Yeah, and like just like tinkering around, and then that sort of he just sort of like came into it really in his 30s, late 30s, I think. So he's had, and now he's like one of the best known bass makers out there, right?
Yeah.
But he's just got an interesting path.
Well, and that sometimes it seems that's kind of the way that things have happened. I kind of got to talking with Linda about and some of the things maybe you and I alluded to when I saw you out at NAMM is that it's kind of a persistence thing. Mm-hmm. You know, you hang around long enough and stuff kind of finds its way back to you.
Right.
And if you make yourself known in a particular environment, well, here it comes.
Yeah.
I had my first bass student back in 1964.
Okay.
But it was just one, and it was in connection with Midwestern Music and Art Camp, which was the second largest one at the time behind Interlochen.
Really?
This was at the University of Kansas.
Oh, at the University of Kansas. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, and again, since my dad was on staff there, it was easier to go do that camp rather than going to Interlochen. But I was there for 2 years. And that's where I actually had my first set of bass lessons.
Kansas is I think people who aren't in the music ed world might not know this, but Kansas is like this like a foundational place for like especially string education. Like so many people have come out of there, and like Wichita State, right, and all that. I mean, it's just like remarkably strong. And then Lawrence, I had so many musicians that went to Lawrence to study, and they had some sort of like graduate program or something they would study. But like I know a lot of people.
Right. It was kind of interesting. Susan Cahill. I don't know if you didn't.
I didn't get a chance to check hers.
That was a weird one. I went down there mostly to say hi to Sue and introduce myself and see whether or not I can, just kind of interest her somewhere down the line to be a clinician at my bass camp. So I'm doing a bass camp. It's part of the teaching thing, development. She's out there in Denver. We have a graduate of the University of Denver in our symphony who's a Suzuki trained, so we kind of have that. But her piano accompanist graduated from KU with jazz studies, and he won an award there at the university named for one of the great jazz broadcasters.
Okay. Yeah.
I was working at the campus radio station and then kind of the local radio station, a fellow by the name of Dick Wright. Well, Dick Wright sang at our wedding.
Oh, really?
in those days while I was there as an undergrad. So, wow, man, so this stuff is kind of weird. So, again, it's just kind of hanging around and, see what this stuff turns out to be like. Yeah. It's kind of coming back at me. My general background was I started, my first run through with lessons was in 1964, but I'd been playing since 1959. So I've been at this for almost 60 years.
Wow.
As a bassist. I play a little electric stuff, but it's,
right, but uprights like your scene.
And that's where I have to teach. It took me a while to kind of get to the point where I could get enough students to say we could actually do a studio. We had 3 string teachers in the Salina School District, and they kind of split the 2 high schools, the 2 middle schools, and the 10 grade schools amongst the 3 of them. And when the fellow that was teaching bass lessons, he was a cellist, and he was the founder of our symphony. When he finally passed away, there was nobody teaching. And I already had the occasional bass student because he would say, I'm going to quit teaching, take a couple of my students. So they would contact me. So I had like 2 students. And then I had to go out. So here's the marketing, this business environment. You get in here and you have to kind of say, well, let me have some of your students. Let's see what we can do. It will show you what because Francois is on the scene out there. And we're no longer all Simandl, though all of the learning material in the school districts is Simandl.
Absolutely Simandl.
Unless you're doing the later versions of Suzuki, where you start in neck position, right?
Right.
Well, it was like pulling teeth. It took me at least 2 years to get the youngest of the string teachers to say, I got a student for you. I'll refer another student to you. Okay, so here's another student. And then it took me another 2 years to get that other teacher who's been around the school district for a while, kind of set in her ways. Okay, I'm seeing the results that you're getting from this. And you got it. I got these kids and they're going through regionals. You got enough at this other school to, go to the regionals. Some of them made state. Yeah. Some of them got ones at state. Right. Okay. So I started to get some of her students. And she had a few students, and then she had a few more students, and eventually they wind up in high school, and, I can get an ensemble with that group. Okay, so we train them, and we go to the regionals, and we go to state, and I get ones. So.
And that's just the social proof, like seeing these people are getting this and doing that, and the word of mouth. I mean, that's where it's at in terms of building a studio.
Absolutely,
for sure.
But it takes forever sometimes,
right?
Because sometimes that teacher doesn't want to give up. The fact that, at least publicly or privately, they don't want to give up the fact that they really don't know much about bass and what's happened in the bass environment.
Right.
We had Gary since the 60s. We had Francois since the 60s, but he didn't do much of anything until he started publishing through Leduc stuff. What, 1978, 79?
Right, and even then it took a
Volume
while until it really started to become something that was
Europe,
even, right,
but,
right.
A few people had gone to some of his stuff. I know there was a Cincinnati base camp or something like that in 78.
Yeah.
Frank Proto,
Exactly.
it might have been one of his first meetings with
Yeah.
Francois. All of a sudden, we got a few people here. Let's take some of Francois' stuff with us. And then we can start throwing that in the mix. It's another thing Mark Morton does. There's kind of the American School of double bass is this amalgam of stuff. Oh,
Absolutely.
I follow that.
Yeah.
I understand that.
Right.
Here's Gary's stuff and some Handel stuff. And it doesn't make any difference whether or not we're using French or German bows. It's, it's all music.
Right.
Here's Francois' stuff, and then here's the blending of the stuff that Mark Morton and his group are doing.
Well, and that's why I always like that term, the American School of Double Bass.
Yeah.
I remember one of my students in high school went and worked with Mark when he was still in Columbus, and with all that.
Right,
and just like, I think it's a great, because it is. It's a melting pot of all these different bass traditions.
Look at all the different foods we take.
Right.
We love Mediterranean. We love, Italian. We love Greek. We love Chinese, we love Mexican. Come on, bring it over here. We're going to do something with it. We'll fix it. We'll make it whatever we do. Tex-Mex, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Right. So all of those things have kind of been going on down through the years, and it's the same thing with the music. Look at what happens here in the music themes in the United States. We have classical, which we're going to have probably for who knows how long we can stand it.
Right.
Jazz. We didn't like jazz. It went to Europe, but now it's coming back again. We have all these different forms of ethnic music. You get reggae.
Yeah.
Just off the coast. Come on, from Jamaica. Bring that on in here. We have Norteño stuff from across the border.
Right. Yeah.
Mexico,
Sure. Absolutely.
So bring that in here. Let's see if we can mash that up and do some stuff with it. So that's kind of where we are. We're literally a melting pot. And when you talk about who's a real American, there's only one ethnic group that is a real America. The rest of us are imports.
Right, yeah.
And then we have just kind of melded, and here we are. And eventually we're going to be such a homogeneous culture that we won't care. Another 50,
inevitable.
80, 100 years, we'll all look alike in different form. Half of us are going to, like Linda and I did the, was it Ancestry.com? Yeah.
Oh, really?
Ancestry.com. We spit in the tube and get the thing back. I did it mostly because my dad was curious, or there's rumors in the family, we might be Native American in here, because my family tree is kind of a little convoluted through the Indian Wars out here and Revolutionary War stuff. And we said, let's just figure it out. Let's settle this out. My dad's getting old, so let's see if there's anything there. Turns out we have no.
Really?
We don't have anything like that. It's all Scandinavian for the most part, and then a little other stuff thrown in. And I knew the Scandinavian part would be pretty strong.
Sure.
I didn't know how strong because my mother was Norwegian. Her parents were Norwegian and English, Irish. But the grandparents, my mom's grandparents, were 100% Norwegian.
Okay.
And they have roots in middle Minnesota.
Minnesota?
Founding, yeah.
Okay.
Acton County, Minnesota.
Wow.
Indian raids and stuff like that. And my great grandmother was the surviving daughter of an Indian raid.
Wow. In Minnesota?
In Minnesota,
yeah.
In the 1840s, 50s, something like that.
Where I'm from not too far from like South Dakota. The big feuds are between the Norwegians and the Swedes, up in that area of the
first.
Yeah, and we were Polish, so we were just like don't know what to do. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, and south of us in Lindsborg, Kansas, that's Swedish founded community.
Yeah,
and they look at the Norwegians. That's still going on.
Yeah, it's still going on. What the heck? Everybody who's not involved in it thinks it's hilarious, and maybe it is hilarious, but it's real.
Well, in a place like that, when we first drove through Lindsborg, shortly after we got there, this reminds me of the town that my mother grew up in. Swedish, Norwegian, but there's so many similarities there. So this looks like Litchfield, Minnesota, which is where my mom grew up. And my dad's from Stillwater, Minnesota, on the St. Croix. You can see Wisconsin across.
Sure.
So,
yeah. That's a beautiful part of the country over there. So set the scene for Salina, Kansas. Like, if people haven't been there and don't, like, where is that? What's nearby? How big is it? You know? Yeah.
All right. Salina, Kansas, small population center. It's about 50,000.
Okay, 50,000.
We're about 3 hours from Kansas City.
Okay.
Straight west towards Denver, but you got another 5 hours to get across the country, to the States. So we're not quite halfway through.
Okay.
So 3 hours west of Kansas City, and we're an hour and a half north of Wichita. So if you look at it, pull out an atlas or a Kansas map and point your finger on Wichita and one in Kansas City, and you go up the two major highways, Salina.
Okay.
That's where we are.
Okay.
One of the advantages of being Salina, and we had some reasons to leave early on after we got there, but we decided not to because the school district was great. It's an incredibly vibrant arts community now. A rarity in the United States is to find an arts and humanities department within the governmental structure.
Oh, there is one. Okay, wow. Yeah, that is rare.
That was how I met Ines.
Oh, really?
I applied to a grant through the Arts and Humanities Commission. It was like $500 or something like that, artist development grant. They gave me money to go down to offset costs of going down to the Oklahoma City Convention. And I had already had Ines's Christmas CD. And I had communicated with her and said, I got to meet you when are you going to Oklahoma City? We'll meet down there.
Okay.
And I also met Norman Ludwin down there. I was looking for music.
Okay, sure.
That's when I had my first bass camp.
Okay, so bass ensemble music. Ines Wirik, fabulous teacher.
And Norman Ludwin's stuff was really pretty good, too. I ended up doing a lot of Ines's stuff because it was a little bit more related to mixed abilities. Norman's stuff is really kind of at that, you got to know your notes and you got to be able to shift. Sure. In some respects, you kind of shift in and out of thumb position, go up and down. So I wasn't quite there. But in 2007?
2007 was that, that was that convention. Right?
I started getting these kids to teach at about 1999, 2000, 2001, right around in there. Okay, so like I said, it just kind of dribbles the kids. But in order to do this stuff, they had to grow, and some of them had to grow fast.
Yeah.
I had one kid that was working with Mark Foley down in Wichita State.
Sure, yeah.
And he would come back. He was already working with Mark Foley the first year I did my camp. And I had a fellow by the name of Ben Beggs who had been studying was on his way to study with Lawrence Hurst.
Okay.
Bransby also at IU. Well, they came and they were part of my camp that first year, and I helped kind of line them up as clinicians, and here we go, take this group, and we're going to do a mass orchestra. So we ended up doing some trios, quartets, and then ensemble stuff.
Cool.
And that was kind of the first one we did.
Okay, wow.
And it went from there. But it was getting the kids first. I got to have them trained, right?
Right.
I got nothing until I can get them trained. And
right.
Then I need music, so that's where Ines kind of came in. And again, Norman Ludwin's stuff was for later.
Well, and Ines is so fantastic with that. And talk about somebody who's been out there creating bass programs from nothing. And that's another thing I just associate with going back to this Kansas in general is all these American String Teachers Association, ASTA, these heroes of the movement. I was at here at ISB, we had this 50th anniversary year just to set the scene, and all these movers and shakers and people that started the organization. Well, I was at ASTA, I don't remember, it was some sort of anniversary year like that with those people, and I just remember thinking what's up with Kansas? There are all these people so you get these students and they start to come in and you start to get more of them word travel and you got to train them, like you said. So how do you get that? And as you were getting these students, were you already kind of using the George Vance Rabath approach, or were you familiar with that approach?
I was kind of on the verge of that stuff.
Okay.
I had a relationship with Johnny Hamill, sort of.
Yeah, sure.
I work with Casey Strings there in Merriam, Kansas, and Johnny was in and out of the shop. Okay, and I was in and out of the shop at the same time. I bought my first real bass from Misha Kreutz and Anton. It was one of their stock pieces there. I never had an instrument of my own all those years.
Right.
Oh, probably should do that. Okay. There's nobody in Salina. We had 2 music stores. They specialize in guitars and pianos and lighting equipment and drums and you name it. I had to go to Kansas City to find anybody. One of my college friends was he was personnel director of the Kansas City Phil.
Okay.
At that time, I called him up. I said, who's got basses for sale? Well, I check with this guy and you check with this guy. And Misha Cruz has got a shop, so check in with him. You get a selection. Walk in there. It's bass nirvana.
Yeah,
it's kind of like walking into some of these guys that are exhibiting today.
Fantastic place for basses, one of the best in the country.
He had 8.
Yeah,
and that was the most I'd ever seen for a while. 8 is nothing for Gage or some Robertsons to bring in. Right, I think they got probably 15, 20 between them.
Right.
So 30 total, but that's kind of where that was. So we kind of spin that back a little bit. So I got my instrument, and I was one of those things. So I had that. The connection again was to bring these people in, get them trained, and so another thing that kind of spun out of that was the Salina Symphony did one summer, we were going to do a Suzuki-esque program.
Yeah.
Okay? This is the gal that was from the symphony, was from the University of Denver. And she said, I want to get these kids in and I want to take them on and eventually get private students, but let's do this once a week thing. And so I was asked, you've got some connection with Casey Strings, can you bring some instruments out? Because the other 2 music stores weren't interested.
Oh.
Because you know what we get with 4, 5, and 6-year-olds?
Right.
We get 8ths and 10ths, and then quarters and halves and the girl from there. Okay. The other 2 music stores didn't want to do anything. And I had this relationship with Misha and Anton. I said, well, take orders and we'll do it. Turns out that we had to be somewhere the night that they held their first class. Misha came out with a van, had all of the orders that I had, and then everything else that it took to service them and upgrade and keep things going.
Yeah.
So I owe them.
Yeah, it's great to have somebody that can provide that. I mean, that's just like makes or breaks program as you're getting it going. Yeah.
But I think the way I kind of proposed this talk to you when we talked at NAMM this winter was just, there's so many of us. For every one of those guys that's got a name tag that shows up as a headliner or something like that, there's people like you and me.
And that's what I thought was really interesting. I totally agree. So what would be cool is you've got the teaching,
right,
and the principal bass of the Salina Symphony, right? And so maybe just fill out the other suite of activities that you do, kind of like in your role. That'd be great to hear.
Well, again, there's not a whole lot of support for the string playing community in these 2 music stores, okay? The teachers were recommending a really, really good repair and knowledgeable fellow on stringed instruments in Wichita. Well, an hour and a half down, hour and a half.
Not easy for like a high school student's family, likes to take all that time to fix a scene.
You have to almost describe outline a day to go down there and then come back again. So that was what was going on. They said, and this was when I was executive director. Well, let me see what I can help you with. Well, the biggest thing is rehearing bows. Oh, okay. And I was playing duets and that sort of thing at the time with our principal viola. It's promotional stuff for the symphony, the bass and viola duets. He was arranging the music, and I had to help him about bass parts. But he also suggested, well, here I got a friend down in Wichita. I own one of his bows. Maybe you could take some lessons on rehearing bows from him. So I did that and kind of started getting some business from the other 2 music stores. I was doing some bow rehear, and I thought this isn't good enough. So in 2003, I went up and I studied with Michael Van up in Canada. Repair, restoration, rehear. So that was kind of cool. So I got into that side of it. And this is, like I say, 2003, but I've been doing it for 3 years before that.
Okay.
To study with this guy down in Wichita. So that was that. Well, and as this thing with the symphony, with the younger students got bigger and bigger, and that's been going 11 years now.
Wow, 11 years.
Oh,
okay, cool.
Well, there's warranty stuff. This thing dropped a bridge. Oh, this thing needs a new bridge because this one cracked. This one needs a sound post fished out and reset. Right. Teachers were kind of good about, straighten up the bridge a little bit, but string breaks, wears out. It's a rental instrument. It's under. At the time we were doing warranties, we'll replace the strings. It was before there was suddenly a huge price hike in strings. So you get free strings on it. So that was the other thing. I started doing repairs. So now I have bow repair. I have instrument repairs. My business is the string man in the local phone book. Uh-huh. And it started out shortly after we got to Salina because I do tennis racket restringing. I'm a competitive tennis player. I played a little bit in college and kind of dropped it for a while and then picked it up again after we got going in Salina in 1970. So I had this business that was it seemed like string man was a good deal. And I kept that name, and all of a sudden we're doing not only racquetball and tennis restringing, but we're also doing bow repairs and instrument repairs and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Fascinating business, by the way. That's great. Tennis racket restringing, instruments, and bows.
So that was just great. Kind of freaky.
Yeah.
It's kind of a side thing here. I'm one of the, outside of the Kansas City area and Wichita area, I am the only certified stringer through the U.S. Racket Stringers Association.
Really?
In that area. There's, a couple thousand nationwide right now, but I'm the only one in Salina.
Okay. But you started up for a similar reason because there wasn't one and that you saw a need for it, kind of similar to the impulse for getting going with the string thing? Okay, cool. So interesting.
And it's just kind of, it's a shingle thing. You hang that out and you say, well, I'm the only certified stringer and we had nobody to do it anyway. Mm-hmm. So, and now in the meantime, we've got a sporting goods store. We have a Dick's Sporting Goods store, a nationwide chain. They don't have a stringer. And we have a fitness club, one of the Genesis systems. Sure. They've got a guy there that strings, but all those people still come to me for some reason.
Okay.
So I was doing league stringing and that sort of thing. In fact, I played, this is years ago now, 1989, played in a national tournament. Mm-hmm. And I was the team restringer.
Oh, wow. Maybe it's because of your business background. I think we talked about that before I hit record. So maybe we can cover that. But like you're doing like what the classic, like what someone in business should do. It's like see a need and fill that need.
Fill it.
Right? And so you've done that multiple times, which is really, did that come from your business background?
Business background, right.
Okay, right. Because a lot of musicians don't even think to do that, And that's
an aspect of this business anywhere. The music business is you got to figure somewhere along the line you're not going to be in the major orchestra. Mm-hmm. And even the trainers of people like that, the Nick Walkers of the world is an example up here in the Lawrencehurst, all those guys that Lawrence has been around forever creating these people. Paul Ellison's been the same way. Get these kids into, they get in, pass an audition. Nick doing the scene, he's getting some people up and running to qualify and get those awesome auditions. But how many of those get filled? I don't know if we mentioned this or not when we were talking behind the scenes, but as an example, the Kansas City Philharmonic, Kansas City Symphony had one opening about 8 years ago, something like that. And I got all the information. I talked to this friend of mine, like it was the business manager. Okay, what are we going to do? Well, here's the audition material and stuff like that. So we've got students that are kind of looking at this. They did the auditions. They did the pare down. They did the callbacks.
Right.
They didn't hire anybody.
Right.
They put it on hold. Mm-hmm. They put it on hold. Eventually hired somebody. And Misha Kreutz was variously the principal or a section base assistant principal down through the years. And Misha retired 6 years ago, I think now.
Okay.
So that position needed to be filled. Eventually it's been filled. In fact, I think maybe that would have been the one that I just talked about. At that time frame, it would have been about right. But come to find out now that there's two new that were in Bay's World, both with the Kansas City Symphony.
Yeah.
But how many? But
openings? Still, right.
Yeah. So how many openings? So somewhere along the line, as a bass player in particular, you got to be thinking, well, who else can I gig with? Mm-hmm. What kind of creative stuff can I come up with? In my community, I play with a harp player. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we had a cellist, and the harpist is doing Celtic fiddle tunes, okay, or harp tunes. So we arranged those, add a bass part, add a cello part, off we go. I told you about the principal violist. He's a Juilliard grad, by the way, which is kind of cool. And we're doing his specialty is American folk tunes, American fiddle tunes, in addition to the Celtic stuff. I play with an improv group from time to time. We just kind of play special events around town.
Yeah,
so
nice.
They need a bass player. They call me from time to time, and then we go. We do improv stuff. Unfortunately, none of them pay any money.
Right.
But in terms of playing and gigging and that sort of thing, think about what else is going on. A number of the people that I've met around here, they're doing things other than music.
Yeah.
But music related.
Right. Sure. Sure.
One of them is working with, a couple of them are working with luthiers. Oh, here's a way I can hire an apprentice with the main luthier at this store and learn that particular business and get involved in doing that. I'll continue to do my bass studies and perform and gig and do that stuff. But you got to pay the bills.
Right.
Right. And so there's a way to do that. In our business, you always need to repair that thing.
That's right.
We have heat, humidity, or lack of both. We have bows that need to be restored, just simply repaired. You lose an end button on your bow or something like that, or screw scripts out in the frog, the knurled nut that's in there. Oh, you got to do that. Find somebody. So all of those things, you find a need. Fill it.
Exactly. And let's look at a map of the country and how many places do not have people. I mean,
that's right.
Yeah, and in a sense, putting their lives on hold and like going after these positions. And that it's great. I wouldn't begrudge anybody doing that, but just like taking a look and thinking of yourself as a business and what you're doing, you create a performance career. That's whether that is you are ending up in one of these orchestras. You're one of the 1 to 3% of people that do that, or just create your career like you're talking about, and working with luthiers and all these things. People that I've talked to, there's a shop in San Francisco, or in Berkeley rather, Gael McKeon. I was talking to a guy that works with him, and he's doing what you're describing, like he's apprenticing, he's working with Gael, and then also playing gigs and doing this and that, right? And it's like super cool work, and it's creative, and it's like in the business, and you're still like these boundaries that I think people set up. It's like, boom, I am an orchestra player and I do this, and maybe private teach a little, right? Or boom, I'm a public school teacher and this is what I do, or I'm, all these things are fluid and can blend together. When you're a great example of like someone that's been doing that.
And again, it's just kind of, I'm hanging around and here's this thing, and all of a sudden stuff starts to come to you.
Right.
Oh, well, Mr. Davis over here, he'll teach you bass lessons, and you need a string for your violin. So it's to the point now within the school district, the first place they refer to get some of these violin, viola, cello, bass issues cleared up is to me. And it wasn't that way just even 7-8 years ago. So that's what it's taken to kind of come back this direction. One of the things that you just kind of touched upon is at some particular point, you anticipate as a musician, you should probably be teaching. You should anticipate that. The Rochester convention, the Eastman convention, we did 2 conventions ago. I can't remember who it was. Well, maybe it was John Shimmick who said, you need to set your schedule up so that somewhere along the line you manage your teaching career kind of like a pianist does. So keep a log, and here's billings, and here's contracts, and here's ways to make sure that you're getting paid, and keep schedules and that sort of thing. Go to the conventions, catch all the latest teaching knowledge that you can, but anticipate, because pianists are good at this. They know they're going to have to be probably not the solo performer, but they're going to be an accompanist, or they're going to have to teach.
Right, exactly.
And they know that going into it, so here's your block of time associated with business management or entrepreneurship. And that is a great thing. And I run across this now more and more and more in publications related to the music environment, is make sure that when you're choosing a school, they're talking about entry level, freshmen incoming, you're going to major in music, see whether or not they run your music program through the business school for at least the entrepreneurship course,
Right.
101 or 201 or whatever that level falls.
I would love to know what percentage of schools do that. I would imagine it's pretty low.
Right now, I think I agree with that.
Yeah, it's starting to change, but it's the phrase I love is like the two of the most conservative professions in the United States or institutions are classical music and higher education.
Right.
And when you fuse those two together,
Boom.
Right, exactly. But no, that's great. That's great advice to see if they do that. Yeah.
And I think that's a big deal. And we're having that discussion. Like I say, I'm the adjunct bass at Kansas Wesleyan University right now in Salina. And we have that discussion now. We have a really, really good director of strings that we didn't have. We hired him. He's going into I think he just completed his third year now. He's a relatively new degree from Manhattan School of Music and Conducting. He studied with, his wife is Russian, Russian pianist, excellent, comes out of the Russian Performance School. He studied with somebody in Russia in conducting technique and that sort of thing. Got his doctorate from KU, Kansas University, in cello performance. But he's saying everywhere he's gone, there is this infusion right now, but he hasn't been all those many places to say it's common.
Yeah.
It's a struggling issue. And what he wants to create within our environment there at this little bitty school in the middle of Kansas that is Methodist driven is, can we hook them up with the business school and look at a course or make sure that this course is happening and being developed even as we kind of grow this business or this particular school of music? Can we connect them to some type of business environment? Business knowledge, and entrepreneurial stuff. Think outside the box. Who was? Gosh, there was a guy a couple of years ago who was touting his book, and maybe you know what it was. It was he was on the internet and advertising his book as kind of a read this information and think about the different places that musicians can play. Can we put ourselves in front of more people? Do we play at the student commons down here? Do we play out by the water fountain out here? How many people would know bassists, ensembles, a sticker bass ensemble out there?
Right. Why not?
Play jazz stuff, play little quirky arrangements of classical pieces or pop tunes and that sort of thing. Put them in the commons down by the food court. Put them downtown in front of the shoe store, that sort of thing. Or put them in the city park.
Right.
It's just a place for people to understand, music is everywhere.
Right.
We are music, and somebody is in this class. Okay, maybe mom and dad, mom, come on down and see us someplace. But all of that has to kind of start to happen also, and we need to understand that we can do that because nobody else is going to find us.
Right.
It's got to come from someone like us, to be able to do that. And, here we go.
Creating your own opportunities. I mean, I look at like the Project Trio guys. This wonderful group. That's their full-time gig, right?
Yeah.
They made a list of everywhere they could possibly play any type of venue at all. They come up with like 3,000, and then just start to like plug in and reach out and do that and go and play wherever. And did it? It's like you were describing the students. Did it all of a sudden blow up and it was huge? No, it started slow, but then you give them 6 months. A couple things are happening. You give them a year. There we are. Go 2 years down the road. Whoa, they've got a career. Go 4 years down the road. And these things take time, but it's so something. And this might come naturally to you just because of your business background and everything. And I think people understand maybe intuitively. Okay, I could go into possibly doing some repairs or this or that, and I know I would go get the training XYZ. But I think something musicians or people without this training really struggle with is like, how the heck do I hang my shingle out there?
Right.
How do I even start to get the word out? Like, what would you do if you got plopped down, or maybe advice to someone who's like plopped down in, you name it, like Rapid City, South Dakota, let's just say, like, John's, what he's done, that sounds amazing. I want to do this. How the heck do I start? Like, what would you do? You like land, boom, I have no work.
No place to go, right?
Yeah. What would you do?
This is how, when we landed in Salina, not knowing anybody.
Yeah.
Brought my family out and we got a house and, guess what? we got to figure out how to make this work out here. Going back someplace else is not an option.
Right.
There's too much going on in this small community. We like it. We're kind of deep into it. Let's look at this. The things that I knew was the most important thing, the easiest thing to do was, well, I'm stringing rackets right now. So I found one of the 2 sporting goods stores in town, and I said, do you have anybody who strings rackets for you? No, we don't. Are you selling rackets? Well, I'd already looked to see.
Right.
Oh, they got tennis rackets. They're not very good quality. They're typical run-of-the-mill compared to what I would play. But, racquetball rackets, tennis rackets. No, we don't. Well, I'll tell you what. Let me do this. I'd like to string a few for you. Let you see the type of work that I do. Tell them a little bit about the differences between how these are strung and how I would string a racket, and then let me do a few, and I'll kick back $1 for you for every one of these that I do. Okay. I still do work for them. They'll send me the occasional referral, but they're doing team sports now.
Yeah.
So they're doing that, but I still get an occasional referral from them to do a racket or something like that. So that's what I did. Sometimes you just go out and walk the streets. Who would be my most likely resource for some of these? Well, okay, the same thing with the bow rehair was the other music stores in town. Okay, well, all right. I knew the owners of both of them, and one of them already had somebody who was doing repairs in bow rehair. Oh, that's okay, no problem. In the early going, it was the other one. Oh, we don't. We have a rental program, and they're all in bad shape. Would you like to rehair those? And then those people that need rehairs from the rental program or anything else that they would say, well, okay, start to get those in here. I'll keep my prices low because they're going to mark them up anyway.
Right.
So I'll make it worth my while and make it worth your while to charge at the upcharge at the other end, and we'll be fine. Okay, so I still have them as a client. In the meantime, the other music store lost their guy that was doing all that. So guess what? I'm getting those 2, and they remembered me.
Well, I want listeners. I want to focus on the rewind and listen to the way that John described talking to the folks in the store that sold rackets and the bows, and just like that sort of and just, do you need this? I noticed that I don't see this. Is this something you need? Right, well, let's do this. Well, let's talk about it. Hey, let me show you the kind of work I can do. I love that line too. Yeah. And just like I think I had zero business training during I've developed things doing this, but like I think a lot of people still who are maybe music students or maybe even past that, they just don't have any idea even how to. And so I think just that's a great bit of advice. You might not even realize because you're so natural with talking about that, but just learning how to talk to people in a way that conveys clearly like what they may need and what you have to offer and how that might develop, and that it doesn't have to be super complicated. I mean, you just sort of like A, B, C. Okay. Boom. Right. So I just love that. Anyway, I just wanted to jump in with that.
Well, part of that too comes from the radio television stuff. You have a little bit more outward.
Right. Did that develop? And we may not have talked about that before I press play, but your degree is actually in radio, television,
film, right?
In film. Okay, so like, is that where you developed some skills just to like communicate clearly, or were you like always good at that?
I think I was probably always like that. Again, like I say, my dad was a theater guy, so and I meet all these people in my dad's circle, his students, and I kind of, as we kind of grow up in my age, I get to meet his students as they kind of go through his program, and as I'm getting older too, actually in some respects I become part of his program because we relied a little bit on him. But it's my dad's personality and my mom's personality just being kind of outgoing and warm and welcoming, and it's ISB.
Yeah.
But we're larger scale here. Just kind of every 2 years is an enormous number of people that come through here. But my dad's circle of people depends upon who's the crew and who's the actors. Some performances are bigger than others. Some of them are only like 4 or 5 or 6 cast members and a couple of crew people. So maybe 7, 8, 10 people associated with it. But there's other large scale things.
Yeah.
That you would do. A good example is Mr. Popper's Penguins.
Okay,
you have to go back and look that one up.
I will look that one up.
But it's a production for children's, and there's like 11 penguins, and there's the mom and the dad character, and ancillary neighbors that kind of come through, and so you've got maybe close to 35 people in that one. They all show up for a cast party when it's all done. So you get to meet all these people, and they're just kind of that way.
Well, you got like what? I don't know if you have ever read Dilbert the comic. But so Scott Adams describes, and you got this, which I just love. Is the people that are most successful, in his observation, are people that combine like one thing that you're pretty good at with another thing that you're pretty good at. And if one of those things can be public speaking, which you obviously like developed like through your family background and the art, like find that, however that is for you. For it could be like a podcast like I'm doing, or like start a YouTube channel, or whatever. But like anything that you're good at, even if you're like top 70th percentile or whatever, like combining that with an ability to communicate clearly, that's just like a huge benefit.
Ultimately, it's kind of a personality development. You probably didn't get to doing this because you knew exactly what it was.
No.
The first day out, right? The first interview.
All. Yeah.
I think part of, when I was in the military, I was doing interviews.
Were you really?
Yeah, I was in Vietnam for a year.
Yeah.
So walking around talking to people and trying to draw out the information that I need and be able to cut that into a story with a little bit of narrative, and we slice a little of the live sounds from the neighborhood or whatever, and then the person that I'm talking to, and build a story around that.
Do you remember any of the questions you would ask people? Going back in time here, but like
a little bit.
Yeah, okay.
A little bit. Some of those are mostly related to like what we're doing here. Find out what's going on, where they're from. Hey, how you doing? You know, where you're from, and yada yada. Just kind of talking about it. You're working with this particular company. What do you like about what you're doing here?
Okay, nice.
Open-ended questions. That's the easiest thing. Yeah. Try not to give them a yes or no.
Yes, exactly.
Thing, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
But what do you think about this, Jason? What do you like best about what you're doing right now?
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah. Well, somebody wants to know something about me,
right?
And that's the other aspect. You have to make them feel like, I really want to know about you. Your life, right? Your life matters to me. I want to know more about you, because at this particular point, the war thing is this is where we are.
Yeah.
And you're my buddy and I'm your buddy for good, bad, or indifferent. And it better be for bad. It can't be for bad, so it's got to be good. And I'm on your side, so let me understand a little bit about where you are and kind of give you some emotional support, if nothing else. And that comes in the form of, what do you think about what you're doing here? What do you like most about what you're doing here?
Yeah.
Oh, well, here, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Because who doesn't want to
invite them in? Yeah.
Here it comes.
No,
right?
that's great.
So that was kind of one of those things. That was the easiest thing to do. And then you pick up bits and pieces of what they say, and you can take a segment out of that. Tell me a little bit more about whatever.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
And off we go from there. Oh, tell me a little bit more about that. Oh, okay, all right. And you phrase it not so much like that, but that's interesting. What what do you think about? Does this fit with what you're talking about? And do we go down the road?
Obviously interested in them. Well, a phrase I love is like, "Don't worry about being interesting. Be interested.
Be interested.
That's like like the key.
The idea is to ask questions, to listen and understand. Not so much, and that's kind of something that's coming around now. Ask questions to listen and understand, not so much to speak.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah,
that's where we are, and that's kind of how I approached everything when I was out in the field for that 1 year in particular. One of the tasks that was sort of endemic or intuited to what I was doing there was to go and do a "Hi, Mom, I'm in Vietnam. I'm thinking of you. It's Christmas time. I love you. I'll miss you. I won't be back right away." But that sort of thing.
Right.
With the U.S. Army Hometown News Center. So we do an interview, and you splice it down to 30 seconds or a minute or something like that, and then you get that tape, and we're all doing reel-to-reel tape.
Sure, of course, yeah.
And then some cassette, because the new cassette players were just kind of
newfangled device.
Yeah, they were. All the guys there were going to send them home to their mom and dads. So we'll send these cassettes back and forth. But these reel-to-reel things would go to the Army Hometown News Center, and I'd do a big reel stuff, and they'd splice out what they need. We'd put them together there at the studio and at the headquarters, and we send it back to the States, and then they'd distribute it. Okay.
Wow.
as luck would have it, my next duty station was at the Army Hometown News Center. They must have thought enough of what I was doing in the field to be able to come and help edit and help distribute. So that was kind of how that worked out. But it's kind of the drawing in of people and let them kind of get a chance to kind of open up and not the sort of way that would scare them. They have to, because what's in here sometimes is very personal.
Right.
And in a war zone, an active war zone, you're just kind of afraid to open up to much of anything. Like you kind of close up really, really deeply, and that's the PTSD thing, the syndrome coming back. So. And I don't know if I have it. I was around Agent Orange, and
Were you really?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah. As a reporter, I was everything from the demilitarized zone down into the Delta, and everywhere in between. I flew with the Salt helicopter companies around the DMZ. I was did that a couple times. I was with a lot of transport companies. We'd run stuff out in convoys, ambushed.
You go through that, going and talking to somebody about stringing up some rackets is no big deal.
Oh, that's no big
or like having a conversation on the executive board for the symphony or anything.
That's right.
And like all those skills. I mean, not that anyone would want to thank you for going through through that and the service and that, but like not that, but like having those skills is like a Swiss Army knife that serves, whether it's talking to teachers to get them to come over, or the lessons themselves and learning how to communicate with those students, like all of those skills, like obviously like served through your work in the business world, before you went into that. And
well, that's what we do. Every place where we have been, we have experiences. We don't realize that they're beneficial now, but when you leave a job, whether or not you're there for 6 weeks or whatever, 10 years or 40 years, you've got experiences there. And wherever you're going to that next stop in your life, you've got all that. Francois says in terms of techniques, we had Semendel, and we have what I'm doing now, but you don't throw them out.
Yeah.
You keep everything. Don't throw anything out. You keep all that. And then you can just makes you a better person, makes you a better player, gives you more love from here that you can give to your student. I really enjoyed the week or so that I spent. I went to Johnny's first camp when he had Francois.
Yeah.
And Francois, I am that. I like what that is. So I can do that, and you've just kind of validated where I am with that. So that's kind of cool.
Well, what a great influence to be around, and how great to be so close to that the Casey Bates workshop and be able to participate and see people like that. And he's such an inspiring figure. I didn't meet him until he was one of my first guests on the podcast. But before that, I'd only seen him on videotape, and I had this videotape of one of the Roboth Institutes from the 90s, and I would watch that thing over and over in high school, and even on videotape, I could get a sense of this person and what he was, and so I learned a lot from him.
Well, he is all of that. When you get a chance to sit in his classes, you get a chance to ask him questions. He gets a chance to respond, and it's in the Francois way,
right?
It's not. It give you a response that isn't maybe quite what you were thinking you were going to get. Yeah, because he has those experiences. He brought them from Lebanon. He brought them to Paris. He's had stops in the United States down through the years. Domaine Forget up in Quebec, I think is where he is.
Yeah, exactly.
He has all that. He's got all those people. He's got all those students. And they're filling him up with what they're doing. And it's just, it's a gratification thing. Gary says he's a grandfather. Yeah. A grandfather of all of us. And I would say that's true. Run this real quick. Gary Carr was only a name to me going through college. Right. My college experiences in high school, there was no Gary Carr. There was just trying to figure out how to play the bass. My orchestra teacher was a bass guy, so I got a little from him. But I think it was just because he played bass in a jazz group around town. It was just kind of minimal stuff. Yeah. And he said, no, okay. So my junior year, I'm going to this camp, and there I get my first teacher. I go into college. Hey, I got an album here by this guy. You ought to listen to this. Who is it? It's Gary Carr. He's a bass guy. So this is from the guys that are in the bass section at the University Symphony. And listen to this. Okay. So we put it on the turntable and, oh, cool. Okay. Well, that's kind of neat. I can't find anything, of course.
Yeah.
He had it sent. This album, I think, came from his parents and came from L.A. or New York or someplace where Gary had been, and you could find the album. Nothing like that in Kansas.
Right.
Okay. So we're poking along and poking years, and the calendar rolls by. Oh, let's see. I've joined the ISB. Let's see. Oh, there's a convention. 2001, Bass Odyssey.
Yeah.
David's.
Went there.
Thing, right?
Yeah.
I went there. Oh, Gary's retiring. He's going to give this thing. So we better go see.
Yeah,
so
right.
And I said, okay, we'll strap on our backpacks and load up some luggage, and we're going to go do that. Okay. So we have a quick photo op with Gary. He did remember because I sent him we were in the Rose thing. We helped support his Rose.
Oh, okay, sure,
Rose,
the yellow rose, the Gary Carr rose.
So we had some of those in our yard, but I communicated with him, and he sent me a Christmas card that year, and I thought, oh, that's so cool. So I kind of keep that with my memorabilia. I didn't bring it out knowing this is just left it at home.
Right, sure.
So here we are now, all these years later, and here's Gary Carr. But in the meantime, I've had Francois. And in the meantime, I've met Mark Morton.
Yeah.
So
all these great influences. Yeah.
The thing that struck me about that particular convention was I did the noon hour thing, the amateur hour.
Yeah.
Got together. Oh, Norman Ledwin. Oh, it's an ensemble. Bass ensembles. Oh, that's cool. I like that stuff. David did not form the Bad Boys at that particular point.
Okay.
They didn't. They were still another 2, 3, 4 conventions away. But they had Bassonia Amorosa. Klaus Trump's.
Yeah, of course.
Played before Gary's recital that final night.
Yeah.
Oh, this is awesome. This is awesome. I need to do that. So here we are all these years later where I don't have any students and we're trying to figure out what the rest of the world is going to throw at me. And then all of a sudden I get my opportunity in 2007. Ines has got music. I meet Johnny Hamill. We're talking about this. Met George Vance just briefly. Gary was nowhere to be seen, but Norman Ledwin was there, and I'm trying to remember another one person I went down specifically to see. It was just kind of just to meet, agreed type thing.
Yeah.
So now I've got kids. I've got music. I got an instrument. I got kids with some instruments that they're renting through me, through Casey Strings. And hey, now I got something. So now we are 10 years later. I'm working on my 11th one right now. Finally got some clinicians. And there's the bass thing coming back. It just kind of, it's been lost for a while. I get to come back. The story that's kind of funny about that is 1985, my neighbor across the street came to me one morning and said, the music group at the church is all seniors. Guess what? They're graduating. They're all going to go off. We need to help the church do some music. Okay, so he and I are playing guitar at that particular point. And we go and we found another singer and we're doing this. And the call went out, well, we need more musicians. That happens at churches from time to time. Well, one Sunday, we had 12 guitarists.
Oh, wow.
Spread it out back across the back of the sanctuary. And of course, half of them can't get to see the music and that sort of stuff. They said, well, I think I can fix this. I play bass. So I talked to the priest that was there, it was a Catholic church, and he said, if I can find a bass, would you guys buy it? Church can own it. I get to play it. I'll take care of it. I'll train anybody who wants to play bass. Oh, sure. So a guy who was a retiring dentist was playing jazz around town, found this really great old blonde K. It was an early, maybe right before World War II set in.
Okay.
But I hunted around with the K people that are knowledgeable out on the internet. They said, yeah, based on this serial number and this description, it's probably from early 1941. So
okay, that's a good, yeah.
But that's how I kind of got back into it. About that same time, the director of the symphony caught me because he went to that church where we were, and he heard me and playing. He said, hey, you should be playing with the symphony. I said, no, I don't have enough time to do that right now. So another 5 years later, And I show up at his doorstep and I say, I think you have an opening for a bass. Would you take me? He said, yeah. So here we go. I started playing again, and then we spin all this forward, and now I'm at the 50th ISB convention. I'm a life member. Mm-hmm. So here we are.
And built this bass scene and just like artistic, like playing in the symphony and just everything that you're doing and helping out with all the service to the community, repairing instruments and doing bows and like really creating this like kind of three-dimensional career in a community that a lot of people would think 50,000 people is not a lot of people, although like Ithaca, New York, here are 50,000 people. Look at all that's happening here. So a lot can happen in a town that size.
Absolutely. Well, and again, like I mentioned early on, we have support.
Yeah.
At the city level.
Yeah.
Again, that's how I went down and specifically went to talk with Ines as part of that Norman Ludwin to get their stuff. And the conversation right out of the bat, well, why are you here? She says. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm here first of all to meet you, which we talked about. No, I mean, why are you here? How did you get here? And what's kind of? Oh, I'm here on a grant. And she stopped. And Ines doesn't stop long.
Right.
A grant?
Yeah.
Through my city, we actually have an organization. I talked about the Salina Arts and Humanities Commission, and they granted me some money to go do some research and study. I've never heard of such a thing. Mm-hmm. And you know who Ines? She's been everywhere.
Right.
I've never heard of such a thing. We're a small community, and we've done this, and it was important. The lady who started it was a student of my father's.
Okay.
At Kansas University. So it was a connection. There's a number of people in the theater community and the arts community in Salina that are generations from my father, which is kind of interesting. And when the word got out that I was in town, you're Davis's son. Oh, yeah. How's he doing? He's fine, that sort of stuff. But the thing was that here's another persistence. Being there long enough that, and maybe being visible.
Yeah.
Enough. Yeah, you just kind of have to put yourself out there. Gary says he's shy. And if it hadn't been for Madeline, then maybe the ISB as it sits today would have had a totally different character.
Yeah.
Would not necessarily have had Gary as its fountainhead. So get out there, be personable, be human. Wear your heart on your sleeve, because this is where we are as bass players. We're the foundation, but quite frequently we're so far back you can't see us.
Yeah, exactly.
On my stage, half of my section is back behind the curtains because we don't have enough room.
Yeah, that's right. I've been there.
And then the viola joke.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, persistence, such a key thing. And you gave some, and John, thank you for taking the time and chatting. This is great. I love to do. I love to end, and I love having people back. So if you ever want to chat again, you're like one of the busiest guys I know. So it's like time is, and I like some sort of piece of advice. You've given a lot of advice here, but I love that we were talking a bit back here about looking at colleges and seeing, do they have some sort of integration with the business program? Do you have any other advice? Because it's such a key decision. There's so much money riding on the line. Mm-hmm. We talk about the statistics and the odds of getting into these orchestras. What other advice might you have for people who are 17, 18 and are auditioning for music school? They want to do something in music. Is there anything else you might offer them?
Yeah, we just have to stay with it.
Stay with it.
Stay with it.
Yeah.
The difference between me at my age and somebody coming into a music program at 17 or 18 or wherever they are, is I've put in the work.
Yeah.
In order to get where you want to go and be successful, for everyone like Gary, there would have been somebody Gary at 17 years old.
Right.
Okay, or younger. Yeah, he had a chance to kind of grow a lot faster than the rest of us. But you got to stay with it. There's work to be done in order to get to there.
Right.
Brahms didn't write his first symphony or didn't have it completed for 10 years. It was on his drawing board for that length. That's an incredible birth time, a gestation period for a symphony. It takes 10 years to do that first symphony. He's writing all this other stuff in the meantime. Yes, there's distractions, but 10 years for his first symphony. you got to put in the work.
Yeah.
You got to put in the work in order to be able to do that. So
great advice.
And don't be afraid to do that. Yes, it's not going to be a step forward today. It may be 2 steps backwards, but how about tomorrow? Francois is quite frequently quoted as saying, maybe you can't do it today. Maybe you can do it tomorrow.
Yeah, that's great.
It's always
great
just kind of, I pick up a lot of that stuff. It gets stuck up in here. I'm 70 years old. You get stuck in there.
Yeah. No, but that's maybe not today, maybe tomorrow. Playing the long game, just having that, sticking with it through the process.
I tell all my kids, you gotta, yes, you have to put in the work, and just stay with it. Yeah, stay with it. Maybe it isn't longer practice. Maybe it's more frequent breaks between practice sessions. Okay. I always tell my kids, in particular, starting out, 5 minutes, 10 minutes at the most. Take a break. Come back and do it again later in the day. Yeah. Maybe right after you come home from school. Chores can wait for 10 minutes while you practice your bass. Leave it unpacked if it's okay in the house. And then do some maybe after dinner before you go to bed.
It's healthier. Okay. It's better than trying to make them grind out 25 minutes. Seems like forever. 5 minutes is easy. Attention wanders. Do that. Focus 5 minutes. I love that. That's a great...
they get frustrated.
Yeah, people listening or teaching young people, listen to that. That's key. Yeah. That's key.
And guess what? When you have to write that down in your practice, you got 20 minutes.
You got 20 minutes, but it doesn't feel like 20 minutes.
Doesn't feel like it. Absolutely. So those are all cool things. And then when you turn that thing in, I did 20 minutes on Monday. Next thing you know, you're at the head of the class in terms of practice.
Right.
So those are awesome things just to think about.
Yeah.
So, but again, the persistent stuff and staying with it, put in the work, it's a grinder. It's a grinder. Bass players have grinder concepts, right? You know that one.
Absolutely.
Ones and fives. Right. I almost mentioned something a couple sessions ago when I was listening to people about. It was the one you did with
Randy Kurtz.
Randy.
Yeah.
It was a couple days ago. 2 days ago?
Yeah, I think so.
Whatever that was.
Yeah.
The music of John Williams is incredibly difficult for bassists because we hold that C on the A string for like 90 measures.
Yep.
And then he wants that low F for about the same amount of time. And you got because you know that you got a passage that you're going to have to play like crazy. Right. And then you got to go back to that. And by the time it's all over with, you get,
Yes. Yeah.
So you get into this mode, you get into that mode.
Right.
Yeah. So that's just part of grinding.
Part of grinding.
And then the next piece, is going to be the same way.
Right.
These are quite frequently Pops concerts.
Yep. Take a break if you can. Shake it out if you can. Take those even 10 seconds to
absolutely. So.
John, thanks again for chatting. And folks, so much gold in here. I really hope you enjoyed this conversation. I learned a lot, and I think that it's great listening material for anybody in any stage of their career, but particularly those people who are kind of trying to figure out what the heck they're going to do in the music world. It's not binary. It's not A or B. It's not playing an orchestra or teach. It's so much more than that. And I think that listening to John and how he's created his career, I think it's inspiring. And I think it's hopeful. It brings hope to people who are anxious, worried, stressed out, confused, concerned about where their career is going to go. That was what I was hoping would happen with this episode, with this conversation with John. I sort of sensed that might be the way it was going to go when we met in NAMM 6 months ago, not Vietnam, but NAMM, the music show. And that's what we got here today. I really enjoyed this conversation, and thank you, John, for taking the time. And I'm sure you have somebody in your life, bass player or not, that would love to hear this conversation. Share it out to them, email it to them, share it on Facebook, share it on Twitter. That would be wonderful and helps the show more than you can imagine. ISB 2017, that's what we're covering on the podcast these days. All of this and all past, current, and future ISB coverage is at contrabassconversations.com/ISB. I thank you so much for listening, and we will see you again soon for more life on the low end of the spectrum.